Hey everybody, it's Shaelene and Kathryn, and we're here for your second mini lesson this week. We are here to talk about consultation team, and not just consultation team and what it is, but more importantly, going to consultation team and feeling satisfied after you leave. Kind of like going to a restaurant and ordering something in a specific way and getting exactly what you want, that feeling. That is the feeling that we hope you all will get with the support of a little exercise that we have for you. And of course, there are a lot of smaller practices that would go into place to have that equation work out successfully more of the time than not. But today our goal is to help leave you with at least one step that will contribute to that.
So I think there's a lot of things that can get in the way of having that feeling of going to team and getting exactly what you hope to get, leaving satisfied. And one of the things I think, obviously there's some stuff that's has to do with how your team functions, like how well you all get along and how mindful you are of one another. And sometimes it has to do with having just a lot of competing demands, like the team having to deal with so many different things, and there's so much to consult about and not enough time to really go deep where you need to. But then, one of the ones that Shaelene and I have seen commonly arising that really interferes with this feeling like you get what you need is the difficulty in asking exactly for what you need and having a consultation question that's really precise and helps the whole team get oriented to what kind of conversation is to follow, what you're looking for, and to be really focused and deliberate on giving you exactly what you need. And oftentimes, developing a good consultation question is easier said than done, because I think so much of it comes from internal observation. You actually have to sort of pay attention to your own experience with your client, the ways in which you might feel insecure in some ways around your abilities or what you should or shouldn't do, or how to know whether or not you're doing the right thing. You have to observe your own discomfort with your client. You have to observe the ways that you're either comfortable or not comfortable in session. Sometimes even your own comfort can be something that you might need help with. You become a little bit more sort of going with the flow in your session because you're so comfortable, and then actually find out that's sort of not going very well for your client. You guys are kind of not rocking the boat when you need to. But all of these things, those observations that you have of yourself and your client in session are going to help you to be able to formulate a really good consultation question.
I'm thinking about how hard it is just to know exactly what it is that you're looking for, especially when you're with this particular client and you don't all you know is you're having a hard time, right? You still don't know exactly what that finished meal and product will look like. You don't know what the painted picture done will look like. And I even think to myself, sometimes I go to get my hair cut and they're like, how do you want it to look? And I'm like, I don't know, what do you think? How do you think it should look? Because it's hard for me to describe what I think it should look like, right, without having that picture in my head. And also the picture of what I think it'll look like might be different from what you think it will look like. And so I just want to highlight how incredibly difficult it is to be able to ask for what you want in a way that actually represents what you want versus what you think you want, or what your client might want, or what you think your team feels like is the best thing. There's just so many pieces that can be really distracting to take you away from, here's what I really need help with in this moment that's actually going to help me treat this client more effectively, and also to motivate me to want to continue treating them. So it seems really easy, right? Just, oh, well, what's your question? What's your question, Kathryn? It seems so easy, but it's really not that simple. It's actually quite difficult.
And I would just add that oftentimes our emotion dysregulation as therapists can really get in the way, because you're struggling with the client. So you're already, you've got some emotions activated within yourself. And then you have an added piece of, having to express that in front of your team, maybe not being super clear, and potentially even having some experience on your team where you tried to ask, you didn't get something helpful out of it. And so you're a little hesitant. You might be even afraid to ask again, or have to sit through all of the answers that people are throwing at you that aren't hitting the spot. And so it contributes to your own emotion dysregulation, fear or avoidance or all kinds of things that might arise. So I think mindfulness is really like a key ingredient here. It's actually being able to observe, to experience, and to accept your own yourself, in that, and the experience that arises in the process, so that you can sort of sift through and actually see what's really needed.
Mindfulness and willingness as well, even with the interpersonal struggles that can come up on team. I know when I was reading through the survey questions to see what people were wanting help with, more time, there were quite a few that were of people who wrote about the struggle of just like interacting with the people on their team, like having difficult people on teams sometimes. And of course that will happen. And so I think about the level of willingness that's involved in that, and how therapists and how we agree to these things, and being on a consultation team as DBT therapists, that we're willing to treat problems that are going to come up that interfere with the team acting effectively with one another, right? And so that means that when you asked for something or you ordered something, instead of just saying, you know what, I'm not coming to this restaurant anymore, or just throwing the soup out when you leave the restaurant and just like not ordering it ever again, you're actually going to say something, and you're going to increase your willingness, and you're going to use opposite action and all of these other skills to be able to work through that, as opposed to just say, you know what, Shaelene, I think I'm going to find another team. And especially for therapists in private practice, like, who do have a choice as to whether or not they're going to stay on this team. They're not linked to an agency, or, they're out there kind of doing it on their own. It would be really easy just to say, I'm not coming back to this restaurant, and just kind of leave and find yourself another team. But then it's like, there's an opportunity there to use all of the skills that we're teaching and practicing that just goes lost. So I think willingness is another one that is super important when it comes to consultation team. Okay.
Agreed.
So let's get into a practice. So if you're here, you're probably a part of a team. And if you're not, maybe you have supervision or consultation coming up, and the same kind of problems are coming up as to where you might feel really stuck with a client, or maybe you're just having a hard time with team in general and how it's going. And, you're leaving the meal and you're not feeling super satisfied, and you want to make that change. So I'm going to invite everyone to grab a piece of paper, or maybe open a note on your phone. And I'm going to take us through a practice that will hopefully help you to get a better sense of what is your question? What is this thing that you're looking for support with in your next consultation team, or like I said, in supervision? Basically, what do you want to order? How do you want it done? How do you want your hair to look at the end of this, right? So go ahead, and once you have your paper, I want you to go ahead and close your eyes. And I want you to think about this question. When you are thinking about doing DBT, so you're thinking about your work as a DBT therapist in this moment, how do you feel and what comes up for you? So you might even pause this recording and just set a timer for 2 minutes. Close your eyes, sit back and breathe. Ask yourself, when thinking about doing DBT at this moment, what do I feel? And then once that 2 minutes is up, just write down whatever comes to mind on that piece of paper. You can pause it again here while you write this all down. Give yourself about another 2 minutes to do that. So you're reflecting for 2 minutes. You're writing whatever comes to mind for 2 minutes, no filter. And then from here, we're going to filter down more to get to a space of what your question or what your need might be. So the way that I think of it is like, I'm either pulled on one side or the other. There's something that, like, when I'm coming to team, I'm in a place that feels overall pretty okay. I'm feeling competent. I've got a sense of ease when doing my work. There's really less stress. There's not high burnout. And so maybe I find myself on the left side of this chart, and maybe not. Maybe more times than not, I'm feeling really stressed and burnt out. I don't feel like I know what I'm doing. I'm ready to resign and go work at Target or whatever my fantasy quick job is at the moment. I'm feeling a sense of dread when coming to team, whether that has to do with how team feels again, and how, my order, they're always getting my order wrong there, or so-and-so always complains about filling up the water, whatever it is. How am I feeling when when the idea of coming to team comes up and doing DBT? And then again, I'm going to pause. And I'm going to reflect and write down for 2 minutes, what do I think is contributing? What's the top contributor here? So again, you might pause the recording right now. And then coming back when you're ready. I'm continuing to move down this chart and kind of whittling this bigger, I almost want to call it like a cloud. Like I'm taking something that really doesn't have a lot of form and a lot of structure to it. I'm taking feelings and sensation and I'm kind of carving them down even more and more as I move through this funnel. So again, if I'm on the left side, I'm thinking about what's contributing to me feeling more confident. What's contributing to this feeling of, yeah, I'm loving DBT right now. And I'm considering, you know, if there's no other agenda items right now, maybe there's something that I might want to share in terms of my competency. Maybe I want to share an update about how that feedback Kathryn gave me last week with targeting active passivity in my client, how that really changed things. And now it feels like things are moving. So maybe I want to give an update on that. And maybe that's my agenda item. Or maybe I filled out that application at Target and I'm on the right side of things here. And I'm realizing that the top contributing factor is that this client that I'm working with has a lot of active passivity and I can't seem to figure out how to treat it without reinforcing it. I'm just kind of throwing that out as an example. And so with that, I'm asking myself, do I need more help accepting where things are right now, changing it, or finding some sort of dialectic? And when I think about finding some sort of dialectic, the indication for me is there's a sense of tension there, or there's a sense of stuckness that I need to get moving. And so within that, again, I ask myself and whittle down even more, what is my top question to get help? So my question for her might be, how can I target active passivity without reinforcing it? My top example is when she comes into session and she tells me that she's reverted to all of her crisis behaviors again. So that's the cue. Generally, I go in with a lot of problem solving. We find ourselves kind of stuck in the same back and forth pattern again, and we both leave feeling really defeated. At least that's my assumption of it, right? So that's my agenda item. I want to know how I can target active passivity without reinforcing it. I've got the specific example ready to go. And I estimate that that's probably going to take at least 12 minutes. The good thing is it's probably only going to take about 2 minutes to ask my question because I've got it pretty whittled down. And it's going to take maybe about 10 minutes for people to give me feedback and for me to take notes and ask clarifying questions and such. Okay, so this is a mindfulness practice to go through almost every time that you're getting ready for team. So you might do this the day before a team, you might do it in the hours leading up to team, but I would encourage you to take time set aside and actually go through each step with a timer in order to help formulate your question.
I just want to point out that example you just gave, Shaelene. You know, one of the things that makes it really difficult in team to get good consultation in a short amount of time is that you might know your problem, maybe you even know exactly what you need, but it's very difficult to weed out what you don't need to share in presenting your question. And what you just gave is a very precise example, and you didn't have to give a case conceptualization or a whole history of the client, which often happens. Like therapists come into team and they say, you know, they know that what they need is help with targeting active passivity and not reinforcing it, but they end up with a 5-minute explanation of who the client is and their history.
Client was born in 1987, and it's like, whoa, speed us up.
Exactly. And then suddenly you're down to, you know, less than 5 minutes for the team to actually give consultation. So this is a really important part of being effective on team, is figuring out what's needed to be shared and what could not be shared. And sometimes it takes a little time to really know it. But one thing I would suggest is when you go through this practice and you settle on your question, try going to team and just say your question and wait for the teammates to ask you for more information, because they may not need that. They may be able to get right to the heart of it and you get satisfied, right? You know exactly what you needed to know when you came into team, you got your answer and you can go and you can save all of the time that it would take to give a more thorough description of all of the history and things like that. And if they need it, they'll ask.
Right.
Or it'll become clear.
I'm thinking about times where my team has said things like, I don't need any validation. It is really hard, but I feel good about that. What I need help with is exactly this. And it's in those times that they're really able to get, I keep going to food references, but like there's so much more meat on the bone there because they go in and they know what they want. And so that time that's there isn't for figuring out, the time is for getting what you ordered, right? And so getting the order clear is your own homework to do outside of team in order to set your team up to be better able to help you. The other thing that I just want to highlight is if team itself is part of your problem, right? Like maybe you're dreading going to team because of the people who are on your team or because there's been a drift, and drifts happen even on the most adherent structured teams, right? Like we have to bring ourselves back. We have to recommit. We have to remind ourselves of what our agreements were when we committed to the team initially. And so because of that, you might put that on the agenda. Like that's still fair game because the goal is to keep you and all of your teammates on team excited about doing DBT. And so if you're not there, and you're not there because you're so annoyed that, you know, Susie never comes to team prepared, but you've never brought this up, then it's going to be really hard for that to change. And then you're going to be violating one of the team agreements about stewing and being silent about your frustrations, right? So I want people to be thinking about this, about all things that come up when you think about being a DBT therapist and the feelings that come up with that, because, you know, we need team in order to be able to support us in doing this work. But it's possible that sometimes what's going on team is part of what might be burning you out. And so use this exercise to help you get those questions out as well, and to get consultation and support from your team members who are involved in it to help out as well. Okay. Anything else we want to add to this practice, Kathryn?
No, I just want to encourage people to actually do it. I think it's not a long practice. You can do it in 5 minutes or so, but give it a try for a couple of weeks. Like each week before you go to your team consultation meeting, spend 5 minutes, actually write things down, get really clear, and see what happens. I think the proof will be in the pudding. The food metaphors are abounding.
Yeah, you might even bring this exercise to team or show this video to your team, and you guys all do a deliberate practice to see what changes on your team when everyone commits to doing this every day before team for maybe a month's time or something like that. It'll be interesting to see what kind of things shift. And again, if everyone's leaving more satisfied, happier team, happier therapists, competency goes up, motivation goes up, your client outcomes change. There's so many things in DBT that feel very much like a ripple effect. And if you change one thing for the better, that it starts to have those, that impact starts to generalize to other areas. Okay, so other things to pay attention to. We have one more mini lesson coming up this week, so make sure to tune in for that. The next mini lesson is on observing limits in a chaotic environment, becoming a wise cook in a busy kitchen. So specifically, we're thinking about you therapists who feel very stretched when your clients have a lot of chaos in their lives, or maybe you're working with teens and you're dealing with parents and schools and psychiatrists and all of these other providers. So make sure to tune in for that. Be sure to comment on this video, reply to this email, let us know how it's going using this practice, especially if you bring it to your team. We would love to hear about that. Share it with your other DBT providers and friends, and we will see you next time. Take care, everybody.
Thanks for joining us.